We're extremely honored to have all of you. And we're hoping you're having such a great time as we are. My name is Jalma. I'm a GSB student at Stanford. I'm an MBA student first year. And I'm here to introduce you to our session, FinTech Revolution in Brazil. There's a financial revolution underway in Brazil. The rapid growth of FinTech startups have made Brazil one of the countries with the highest numbers of FinTech startups in the world. There is, however, an enormous discrepancy between the growth of FinTech and the growth of other technology industries, such as EdTech and HealthTech. This panel aims to explore the many factors that prompted the rise of FinTech and revolution in Brazil, and provide innovative ways in which the knowledge acquired from FinTech entrepreneurship can be applied to other industries in the country as well. For the discussion, we will have André, David Velez, Henrique Dubugras, moderated by Micky Malka. André is the founder of StoneCo, one of the main payments acquired companies in Brazil. André is a serial entrepreneur has been a serial entrepreneur since he's 15 years old. He has founded and sold multiple companies in the past decade, such as Braspag, Moip, CV Group, and others. André and his partner, Eduardo Ponte, support several education initiatives in Brazil, such as the NGOs Alpha Lumen and Fundação Estudar, where they sit on the board. They invest in dozens of technology companies in various stages through Arpex Capital, and they're also independent board members of 2 listed companies. David Velez is the CEO of Nubank, a Brazilian fintech company. Before founding Nubank in 2013, David was a partner at Sequoia Capital and in charge of the firm's Latin American investments. Before Sequoia, David worked in investment banking and growth equity in Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and General Atlantic. He holds a BS in Management Science and Engineering from Stanford University and an MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Henrique Dubugras is the co-founder and CEO of Brex, the first of its kind corporate card for startups, and of which Brazil at Silicon Valley is a very happy and loyal customer. Henrique co-founded Pagar.me, the Stripe of Brazil, when he was 16 years old. And in just 3 years, they reached $1.5 billion in transacted volumes. In the fall of 2016, Henrique sold Pagar.me and enrolled in Stanford University. After 8 months, he left school and founded Brex, which raised over $200 million in funding in 3 rounds in just 18 months. They were the fastest US business-to-business company to be valued over $1 billion. Micky Malka is the founder of Ribbit Capital, a venture capital firm targeting early-stage companies that use technology to innovate financial services worldwide. Ribbit is currently invested in over 40 companies globally. Mr. Malka has more than 20 years of experience building and investing in technology and financial services companies across 4 continents. He founded, co-founded, and exited several companies in the brokerage, payments, and financial services in general spaces, such as Heptagon Group, Patagon.com, Banco Lemon, and Banco Brasi. So please join me in welcoming André, David, Henrique, and Micky.
All right. So, every joke always starts with 3 guys going to a bar. So, what are the chances that a Carioca wins in Sao Paulo in financial services, a Colombian moves to Brazil to win, or a Brazilian moves to Silicon Valley to win? And the Venezuelan has the luck to know all of them before they even started each of these companies, and is an investor in the 3 companies.
And a guy moves from Venezuela to win in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. So, quick question here. Raise your hand if you're a client of any of their services, if you own. Great. Raise your hand if you're an investor in any of their companies. All right, good. And how many of you think they're just lucky and they don't know what they're doing? No? Nobody? That's a good answer.
Can be honest. It's okay. Take the feedback.
And how many think their best days are past? Great. So we're in Silicon Valley. This is great news. So the first question I have, since I've known all of you, and this time they don't know the questions. We didn't talk about them. I decided not to follow some of the questions they asked me, brought some other questions. But so it's going to be a little bit of a surprise party for them. Let's start with something different. Let's start with a moment in the company's life that you thought you failed? And talk about it a little bit. And how is that feeling compared to where you are today?
I can start. So I'm sure a lot of people might remember this. It happened maybe about 3 years ago when I was actually in the US and I got some CNBC News got a headline saying that the Brazilian government wanted to change one big regulation, the time of liquidation, significantly from one day to another one via a decreto, which for a young company like ours was a very significant challenge. And this happened first in the US, then in Brazil, flew back down to Brazil. This created a significant challenge for, I think, everybody. And it was a really tough weekend trying to figure what to do at that point. That kind of marks, I think, one of our crises as a company. What was amazing, though, is the following Monday, we wake up, and there were 15,000 people writing in the Twitter of this Brazilian central bank saying that was an absolutely crazy thing to do. That Brazil needed competition, that Brazil needed alternatives, that people were happy being our customers, and that they couldn't absolutely do it. And this had, ultimately, I think this kind of showed something that we had a little bit of an hypothesis in the very beginning, which is if you actually built a product that millions and millions of people were loving, ultimately they were your biggest defense versus competition, versus regulators, versus absolutely everybody. So that was a pretty bleak weekend with a nice ending at the other side.
Well, I have pretty much the same issue that Davi had when we spoke a lot at that time. And I think the output of that is that we figured out that we had to deal with Brasilia somehow, right? We have to structure our companies to deal with government. And I think as disruptors, I think the two companies had to figure out a way to do that in the new Brazil style. Like really having to put together technical studies about the subject and in presenting that to all the authorities. So we had to dive deep on the matter, and we also had to include in our weeks, some time to be spent on this part of the business. Just being aware that if you build something that challenges oligopolies in Brazil, it will always will happen. So we just have to be prepared to this kind of reactions. So I would say the same thing that Davi said. So I think including government affairs in our business was something that occurred a little later in this first phase of the business, but it's something that we have to deal with.
So in Brazil, we didn't get big enough for the government to care about us, so we didn't have that problem. But I think when we were in Brazil, we were looking at Silicon Valley, and we see Facebook saying things like, hey, move fast and break things. So we broke something pretty big once. When we were running Pagarme, once one of our coders replaced the code, and all the transactions that had installments ended up going to one installment. So people were trying to buy things in like 12 installments, and then they were in reality getting one installment. And for people who know Brazil, like all of you really well, that's like a really big deal for a consumer. And it was, thousands of transactions. And we thought, that's done. No one's going to be our customer anymore. We're going to fail. We just transformed the company into a big call center to try to reprocess everything. And turns out it was fine, but it was, we thought we wouldn't going to bounce back for that because customers were very, very upset. So I think we learned that, in financial services businesses, you have to move fast, but without breaking things, so you have to.
And let's go to the opposite side then now. What was the tipping point? When was that moment? Each one of you has had a moment when you said, oh, wow, actually there's something here big, and I know it's going to be a big business. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember how you felt, what was going on? How did you share it with your team?
in our case, I think we had a good sense of where we could go since the beginning because of our experience in our previous companies. We pretty much knew the size of the opportunity, but these companies are about to die all the time. So I think what David mentioned about this problem, I was trying to remember here. I had many other moments like that where you think that the company can be broken in a little bit. So there's a part of our time as entrepreneurs that we take to de-risk the business many different times. So these businesses are about to die all the time. I think the position we have now and the reason why in Stone's case went public and organized the company, and we spent a lot of time in trying to organize the company to make sure we had all the controls. And in the financial services world, you cannot, as Henrique mentioned, you cannot do anything wrong. So we have to be very careful with the product and with the regulation. And in the beginning, we were just spending so much time with the product. Now we had to rebalance things and make things more organized. So I think today the company is a much better position than it was before. But in the first 5 years, the company had many moments that was about to die. So it's good that also created the culture.
So your point is that over those years, more times it was about to die than more times you thought they was going to be successful.
Well, I would think so, because in the beginning we knew pretty much where we could get, and we just think that it's still the early beginning for Stone. There's a transformation going on in the financial service world in Brazil that is very deep and incredibly big. So I think it's very easy for us, crystal clear, to see the size of the opportunity. And I think we could see that since the beginning. I think we were increasing over time at the times that we were de-risking some of those factors and taking out of the table those factors. We are seeing that the opportunity is even bigger. So we knew it was big, but every time we de-risk a little bit the business, we can see that the company can be much bigger. And then when you think about other countries, there are other countries in Latin America that had the same problem that Brazil had. And when you think about what you can do in the banking service, there's just a lot to do. Mm-hmm. We don't see the wall, so it's very far away, yep. Which is exciting. Yep.
So I remember my co-founder, Christina, telling me at the beginning, saying, David, nobody likes credit cards. Nobody wakes up in the morning saying, I want to get a credit card today. It's a horrible product. It's completely commoditized. Credit cards charge 15% per month, a lot of fees, a lot of complexity. Banks are telemarketing, sending them to people's houses. It's a horrible product. It's not going to be, we cannot, it's not a product of desire. And so, okay, fine. I mean, that makes sense. We obviously wanted to decommoditize that experience and create something new. But then we announced our Series A, I think, towards the end of 2014, and we were about 12 employees, and we had a wager of how many people were actually going to apply for the card. And I think the average, we had at that point 200 customers. It was all friends and family. I think people said, on average, we'll get 1,000 people to apply. And the announcement came, and we got 200 people to apply. And so I was like, crap, okay, fine. This is, it's going to be harder, and maybe people are not excited about credit cards. But then, over the next maybe 2, 3, 4 months, I went to pay with my purple card in a barzinho that was close to the office. And the lady there said, I really like the card. Can I take a photo and put it in my Facebook where I have 10,000 followers? It's like, why would anybody do that for a credit card? And so I said, of course, yeah, please go ahead, do it. And then the taxi driver said, I really like that card. Can you send me a convite? And I was like, yeah, but let me write it down. And I kept losing the paper of where to write down the emails of the person. So we went quickly and put a feature in the app saying, if you want to invite somebody, just put the email and send it. And then we start seeing that happening and more people asking and the conventions, and every day we start kind of seeing that virality kicking in. And then the press started kicking in. And then there was, I think, maybe towards the beginning of 2015, there were a few articles, and our goal for that month, I think, was 5,000 new customers. And after a couple of articles, we got 30,000 people applying. And so I think that was sort of the point where we said, okay, fine, nobody woke up in the morning wanting to get a credit card, but it was a market where people were so ready for alternatives, where there was so much frustration, that if you offer a new alternative that was good for consumers, that you offer a new alternative that really wanted to break and decommoditize and create a bit of a blue ocean, people were ready to embrace. And they were so ready to embrace that they effectively created a viral product for a credit card, which nowhere in the world you've actually seen a credit card product being something that people actually invite. So I think it was sort of that March 2015 where we say, okay, maybe our growth projections would be able to beat them, and that organic referral engine is going to be a pretty significant part of our growth.
And that's why you wear purple shorts now?
Exactly. Purple everywhere.
So for us, I think it was, we took a long time to launch. So we started a company March 17. We, just launched publicly. It was June last year. And I think between zero and launch, it was a lot of grinding. I don't know if this thing's gonna work or not. Am I gonna die or not? And then we launched, and I think it was similar to his story that the market needed something better so much that every time we thought, hey, we're gonna hit this number, then we actually hit a bigger number than we thought. And I think Micky's on the board, so he saw the plan that we presented the board. We delivered almost 2 times as that by the end of the year. So I think when you start, I'm a very optimistic person. So we started doing better than we thought we would. But I think, I wouldn't say we passed the tipping point yet. Well, I say, wow, this is going to be a huge business. I think that if you have, big ambitions, it's still a lot of the beginning, right? Because, hey, maybe we get this corporate card thing right, or for startups, but maybe, we fuck up in the other verticals, and then, boom, it's smaller than we think, right? So I think I wouldn't say in my head, we're past that point of no failure yet. I think, there's still a chance. But, that chance was what it makes it interesting as well, because, if it was already a one thing, why would it be interesting?
Micky, there's one thing that we saw that could be considered a tipping point for us. When we could do the math about our hub strategy, when we really put together a model in which we go to the small cities, and we could see the cohort analysis for 3 or 4 different group of cities, and we were seeing a very repeatable business model there. Something that was very, very replicable. So I think at that point, we could see, we have the entire Brazil to penetrate. The product is great. Customer service has an NPS of 70. So it's in good shape. It's just go and replicate. So I think at that point, we figured out we were in a very good position. Aside of that, we had many other type of risks that we wanted to de-risk, but at that point, when we could do the math and recognize the patterns of growth, I think the whole team figured out that it could be a big business.
One topic that every time I chat with either one of you always comes up is talent. Talent, how to recruit talent. How difficult or easy is to find them in Brazil? How easy or difficult to find them in Silicon Valley? How easy or difficult is to fly them from the US to Brazil if needed, or even export them? So love to go a little bit deeper on how you thought about your cultures and how have you dealt as your companies grow and exponentially, and you have to keep bringing talent? How are you thinking about those aspects?
So for us, it was a very different thing. We built a company in Brazil, and then we came to Silicon Valley. And those were two very different experiences of talent. I would say that in Brazil, the biggest challenge was how do we find good people that have some experience. And a lot of the times you're able to bring them because there's not a lot of great opportunities in Brazil. So I would say it was harder to find and easier to bring. Here, I would say is the complete opposite. You can very clearly pinpoint a lot of great people with great experience, but it's really, really hard to bring them. So it changes a little bit the problem set. And I think the most the biggest difference, and I'm curious to see David answer and how he brought people from here to there, because that's it seems impossible, and you guys did, but is finding finding people who had experience in growth stages, who've seen companies that were 100 employees and went to 2,000 employees, people who lived through that, accelerates you a lot, and allows you to not make mistakes and the chaos of this super fast growth. And this is something very special about Silicon Valley that we didn't have in Brazil. In Brazil, we had to, figure out a lot of things ourselves, and train our own people. Here, so a lot of times we get them trained already, which is very helpful.
What I like in this story is tell that story about I have 6 offers. Why should I work for Brex?
Yeah, so especially with entry-level engineers, people graduating from college, it's almost that they're interviewing you instead of the other way around. So I get college grads, I'm 23 as well, so it's not that different in age, but that are 22 years old and just sit with me like an investor, and they're tougher than Micky, I swear to God.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it is the question about how to today build a company. For us is the clearly number one bottleneck. There is a ton of capital out there, but it's talent, and that's what keeps us from going faster, from doing everything we want to do. I would say a couple of things that we've done. Right. The first thing is when I was here at Sequoia, one of the things that I kept hearing again and again and again from my partners was the culture of a company gets set up with the first 10 to 12 employees in the first 3 to 6 months. So that's the time. That is the time where to build the culture that you want and the type of talent that you want. And if time goes by and a year or 2 years, 3 years, and you suddenly want to improve your culture or want to increase the bar of that talent, it's incredibly hard to actually do that. So we were very meticulous and very detailed about the composition of that initial team, about engaging in conversation about what were the values of the company, what were the values of the culture. This was really, really early on where we didn't, a lot of the questions, there were no answers for a ton of the questions, and we just repeated again and again and had try to arrive to those set of values and culture that we wanted to have. And we recruited incredibly talented people that were going to set the bar for the next 50 or 100 or 1,000 people. So once that bar was there, we would go and interview more people, and it was clear to everybody where they were at that level or not. So I think setting up the initial conditions early on the right way was a very important thing for us. The other thing I would mention is, since the very beginning, big part of that culture was purpose. We saw a market that was effectively an oligopoly, where 5 companies controlled 90% of everything, where consumers were in a lot of pain every single day, where 60 million people had no access to financial services. And for us, the purpose and the impact of we're going to bring competition to this market. Financial services, effectively, every consumer and company sits on top of financial services as an industry. If that industry doesn't operate well, the cost of that inefficiency is paid by the entire society. And so since the beginning, we saw if we can bring more efficiency to that industry, we can bring more competition, the entire society is going to feel the benefit of that. And so we created a sense of purpose very early on, and that has allowed us to recruit extremely good people, that has allowed us to retain very good people. Today, when the banks call our engineers and offer them 2x the salaries, they don't go. They offer them 3x the salary, they won't go because they're not there for the money. They're there to really create a significant impact. And some of those big banks obviously have all the money in the world, but they honestly don't have a purpose. The purpose is increasing your 5 billion net income to 5.5 billion net income the following year. So that's not an engaging real strategy anymore. Well, we can clearly say we're here to make and impact people's life. And ultimately, I think that's what has helped us bring people even from abroad. It's not easy. We have to talk to a lot of people. We have to talk to 100 people in Silicon Valley to maybe get 10 that get interested. But when we are able to pitch them the impact, if you're an engineer in Google, in Silicon Valley, what is your impact? Google has all the best engineers in the world. If that person goes away tomorrow, they'll be okay. They'll be totally fine. If they go to Nubank and they take our engineering capacity 10% up, which allows us to be 5% better at what we do, the impact is significantly larger than what they're creating in Silicon Valley. So I think for the people in Silicon Valley or in Europe that care about that impact, when we explain them what we want to do, that ultimately is what we can offer to them to bring it to Brazil that very few Silicon Valley companies can actually provide. And so purpose ends up being a pretty important part of that talent strategy for us.
I would say the same thing, Micky. I think these companies that we are creating here are all purpose-driven. We definitely put the client first, and we put the mission of the company of serving better that industry and transforming the industry. So I think this kind of purpose that will help the society to be changed for the better really attracts the millennials. People really want to be associated with that. And I think the sense of meritocracy that we have in the company had created our brand with the young people in Brazil that help us to be, for example, we have different channels, but we have the Recruiter channel, for example. There's a annual recruitment program. There is a run rate of almost 70,000, 80,000 candidates this year. So a lot of young people that really wants to engage and work with the company. And I think it's a product of the purpose that the company is serving. I think a company that serves purpose goes much farther than anyone else. I think the companies that we are competing with were companies that were only focused on making money. I think we're focused on making money and improving society. So that really changes the mind of the young people that really wants to work to this sort of organizations. And then you have to be very meritocratical when you engage these people, and you really have to make the best ones win, and you have to take out the bad ones. So once I heard from one of our gurus that said, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. So if you also allow bad people to continue in the company, then you're gone. Your culture is gone.
The three of you have had not only a lot of Brazilian experience, but also a lot of Silicon Valley experience. What can Brazil teach Silicon Valley?
So I have an example.
Go ahead.
What the jungle could help you here in Silicon Valley?
So, if we think that we wouldn't be able to build Brex here if we hadn't started a company in Brazil. Like, that is 100% sure. There's a few things that Brazil taught us a lot. The first one is scarcity generates value. So because in Brazil we were so resource constrained in the beginning, and I think that was the case for your first companies as well, it kind of like forces you to learn to get to product market fit really quickly. We had a lot of times where, if we didn't, generate revenue that month, we wouldn't be able to pay the bills. So it forced us to build stuff that clients want and they're willing to pay for it in order to, in order to survive. that kind of creates a forcing function of your head of figuring out what actually generates value, what's actually a painkiller, and people are willing to pay for it, versus what is, kind of like, oh, something nice to have. The bad part about that is I think, we probably made some not super long-term investments where we were very focused on surviving in the short term. But I think when we came to Brex, we kind of could balance both of those things out and, have the forcing function of generating value, but at the same time kind of like having, investing for the longer term. I think that's one. Two, especially in our industry, Brazilians are really creative fraudsters. Like they're really, really good at it. So it actually created a lot of like paranoia in our head that we're going to be defrauded all the time. So we just don't trust a lot, when we're building our, processes and stuff like that. Not internally for our people, we trust our people, but in terms of like just risk management of the company is just like a little bit more aggressive in terms of risk, and that allowed us to build something really good when coming here to the US too.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Great question that I'm going to think through. The first one I can think of is when I moved to Brazil in 2012, and I started looking at even investing in startups in Brazil in 2010. A lot of the startups were trying to copy U.S. models. And I want to be the X, of Brazil. I want to be the Y of Brazil. I'm proud to say that now there are about 5 Nubank clones in the U.S. There are Nubank clones in Indonesia. There are Nubank clones in India, and they actually call them, I want to be the Nubank of India. I want to be a Nubank of China. I want to be a Nubank of the U.S. So I'm sure there are other examples, but this is a clear example of where a Brazilian people all over the world are copying a Brazilian tech company, and they're trying to be the clone of their geos.
I can attest to that. I've seen that pitch.
And related to that, maybe one of the things that I think we've done well, and I think Brazilian companies do well, and I think that speaks to, you said you had an NPS of 70, which is incredibly high. We have an NPS also really, really high, close to over 80, is I think Brazilians and Latins were able to build really strong human connections. In Brazil, it's all about building connections and being less necessarily transactional, but more really creating strong connection or emotional connections with consumers. And that's one of the things that we really wanted to do with our brand in a market where banks had forgotten that they had customers, where they completely ignored and people went to the agencia and felt that the bank manager was there sort of making a favor. We wanted to create a different type of human connection with consumers. And we did that through the type of being very careful about the vocabulary we used to consumers, with the product design that we had. A lot of investment in building great customer service. Everybody today talks about AI and chatbots and all that stuff, and obviously a lot of that is the future. But today, if you have a problem and you can call us, you immediately talk to a human being that will give you an answer now. You don't want to wait 30 minutes. You don't want to be transferred to a bunch of different people. And it's almost like basic and almost obvious, but that's something we're very, very focused about doing since the very beginning. So I think Brazilian companies can do that better than US. And I think there's an opportunity for US companies or even European companies to create stronger emotional connections with consumers by remembering that, a lot of it's technology, and I think technology plays a huge role, but besides technology also, it's all about creating really, really strong emotional connections. And some of the Brazilian brands that have done that really well can teach that to more colder type of Silicon Valley technology companies.
Well, so I would repeat most of the things that Henrique said because we were learning that together. We are very close and involved with Brex, so I saw them as an entrepreneur in Brazil, and I followed what they're doing here. So I'm learning the differences with Brex's story. So it's pretty much what Henrique said overall. In terms of the products and the business models that I think we created in Brazil, I'm also seeing this, Davi. I think if you copy if you go to payments, to what we do in acquiring, business in merchant acquiring, a lot of what we do was driven by the problems that we locally had in Brazil. So Brazil is a large market in payments. We try to crack the code by going directly to the merchants and educating them about their cash flows and about what they could do better. And I think that fits many other markets in the world. So that is a replicable business model that can be used in different markets. And I think Nubank's model can also be replicable in different markets. Hope we can do that before people start copying us in the markets that we want to go, right? But that's okay. I think it's a good thing that there's a big country where disruption is going on, and these business models really can be copied in developed markets. Payments is something very old all over the world, as you know.
Yeah, very old. When you think, so right now in Brazil is booming in terms of FinTech at all levels. It wasn't even a word 6 years ago anywhere in the world, and in Brazil it has become a very big one. Numbers are, there's roughly 350 FinTech startups right now. And then you hear Chespe or BTG or the incumbents, big banks, all of them are building their FinTech arm and getting involved and going after the same space. Who do you feel threatened by? The smaller guys that are coming up? That could be the next Stone, the next Nubank in a different way? Or the incumbents that are there, or the big players who are going after the technology layer, the way they're seeing you go?
I think for us, the way we want to always think about that question is we love the way Bezos at Amazon talks about it, is we want to continue to be focused on the consumer, look a little bit at the competition, but if we continuously maintain the focus on doing everything that we do the right way, I think we're going to be fine. That being said, what I would mention is it's not too different. The entire FinTech thing is not too different from the e-commerce bubble maybe 10 years ago. It's not too different from the compras colectivas. It's not too different from all the different waves of technology where you had new entrants, technology companies, and you have incumbents. And some of the common denominators, what happens is there are two ways that incumbents might react. One tends to see these opportunities as a technology challenge, and then they go and do technology, and they build a website, and they build an app, and they think, that's it, I'm done, I have an app, I have a website. And that tends to be a little bit like Blockbuster building the website to compete with Netflix. Some of them, I think, kind of get it a little bit better. This is more than a technology challenge, it's a cultural challenge, and then they go through the really hard pain of changing culture. Those are the real challengers, I think, for us. The companies that realize that, yeah, fine, changing culture is an extremely hard challenge. Changing the culture for a company that has 120,000 employees that have worked in a certain way for 5, 6, 7 decades is an incredible challenge. But some are trying to do it, and so I think those are probably the best chance, and the ones that we continue to look a little bit closer. Than necessarily the ones that go and, I have a site now and I'm going to go invest $100 million in TV to compete with you.
I think in our case, I think we even get tired of ourselves. I think our worst competitors is ourselves. We try to really be better for tomorrow every single day, and really challenge each other internally to do that. I think only the paranoid survive. So indeed, we pay attention to all of them. We try to be humble to the smallest company that is creating something good. We try to associate with new entrepreneurs all the time to see fresh ideas. We are also very humble about the incumbents. We're going to see a friend of ours who's a professor that studies here in Stanford, incumbents versus insurgents. And what I learned is it's not only it's not always that the insurgents wins, right? There are really good incumbents sometimes that really shift their business models and create something that can can be strong and over time can win. So we have to keep ourselves very humble about the incumbents too. It's difficult for incumbents to change their business models because of their economic incentives. But look, these guys are very powerful, very big organizations, some of them very competent. And the startups, we try to have a different approach. It's not, we try to map them as people that we can be associated with, rather than exactly competing. There are somehow from different angles. We now have I think the market is much more complex. So you have to see different dynamics, and you have to see competition in a different dimension. Someone doing something here that will be in a position to get into your market and disrupt your client base very quickly. So we try to be as paranoid as we can, but improve ourselves every single day.
So I'm not in Brazil, but the only comment I would add to this is I think competition is like something to be worried about in general in any business, but FinTech is not a very winner-takes-all business. It's not a business that one guy wins and everyone else loses. A lot of times, share just gets redistributed, if that makes sense. So I think it's one business that especially you have to focus on the customer and focus on just doing your best every day. Because it's not like business that have very strong network effects, because if someone get that network, then you're dead kind of thing.
We got 8 minutes left. I got a couple more light questions. Which business is going to be the biggest and why? Of the three.
You answered that.
No, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you answer that question.
Brex.
There is only one way to answer that question, right? Nubank.
The market will say. Well, actually, I have no idea. I think these three companies, they are somehow in similar but different markets, very complementary, and the transformation is so big that we really see as a space to these two companies in Brazil, and for Brex certainly will be one of the largest companies in the U.S.
There we go.
Hopefully.
We expect so.
Yeah.
We're all cheering.
It's not pressure.
And since you three have known each other for a long time in different ways, in different interactions, and what do you admire about each other? When you look at from the outside as the leader of your company, what do you admire?
I'll start with that one. So I think André met 2013. David, I think we met 2014 maybe. So both companies were still in the beginning. I think that the thing I most admire about André is just his ability to get great people around him. I think it's crazy the level of talent that Stone was able to attract, of young talent and older talent since the beginning, and just retaining that. And I think talent that sometimes maybe wasn't obvious for everybody else, and then for some reason André has a special power of seeing it and then just doing everything he can to retain it. So that was like definitely a big model inspiration. And also I think coming back to a little bit what David responded about Brazilians, I think the US is a very transactional place. Like you get to meetings here and people cross their legs and they're like, how can I help you? And like in Brazil, we say, hey, how are you? Like, well, how is the weather? And like, you have like these 5 minutes of like, random conversation. Here, people's like, how can I help you? And like this 15-minute, very productive meeting. And I think like André has like a very, very special talent on, developing very, very deep relationship with people that gets a lot of people to trust him over a long period of time. David, what I know a little bit less, but I've been constantly impressed is, a lot of times we thought that Silicon Valley principles couldn't apply to Brazil, and I think Nubank has proved us wrong in a bunch of things there. Like even recruiting executives from Silicon Valley and like, focusing on growth, raising money from people externally, obsessing about the customer and building a great product and having like really strong engineering talent. I think like a lot of Silicon Valley principles that very few companies, if no companies had ever applied to Brazil and scale, I think Davi and Nubank are doing the best job at that.
Yeah, I would add, and for both Stone and Brex, Henrique, what I admire the most is their ability to execute. But I would even divide the execution. I think where you have built a machine. Stone is an incredible, efficient machine at executing a really impressive business plan, and I think that it requires a lot of discipline and operational efficiency to run the operations that you do. The way I would characterize your execution, Henrique, different is more about how you go from the idea to a big startup. I always say that the idea is 1%. Execution is 99. Everybody has ideas all day long, but you've been executing ideas since you were what, like 11 or 10? So it just kind of shows two very different ways of execute really ambitious business plans.
Well, so I'll speak also about Henrique, but Davi is certainly one of the best disruptors I could ever see. And I remember a conversation we had, like I think 2 years ago, where he was telling in more detail his vision when we met in an event in São Paulo, when we spent a lot of time talking. It's impressive how, a guy arriving from Colombia figured out Brazil very quickly, assembled a bunch of great people in technology. He was lean since the beginning. So I think his mindset of doing things that he was betting against the odds, and he was right. And he was doing something very, very difficult in Brazil that people for a long time couldn't believe. And I think he had an ability to attract people from different countries to invest and to trust in this long-term strategy that has been proven to be a very good one. So, Davi, congratulations for what you're building. I think you're changing the country, and thanks for going to Brazil to become an entrepreneur. I think it's going to be an example for many other people who were born outside Brazil and can use their talents to be, to improve our country. So the ability for companies to really change, the ability for companies to change a country, is that something that we are learning, seeing most of those developed countries. So this is what I can say about Davi. And about Henrique, I know Henrique since he's 14 years old. And I saw the evolution of this young boy, 22 years old, building a company so carefully as he's doing with Brex. It's like just so mature for his age. I think if he keeps humility and he keeps working hard as he's doing, he's going to be one of the biggest entrepreneurs of our age. So it's as solid like a rock.
So, one comment I have to this question and the way they answer is just, you can see when they talk about how they value their customer and how they value their culture and their teams, it's really hard to get up here and talk about somebody else's business and be able to describe them that way. That's what it means. In all honesty, when you find great entrepreneurs that can build big businesses, it's not only that they can recruit the right people and they have a passion, but they can take somebody else and they can describe them in this way. If we sit here, some of the incumbents from any industry, anywhere in the world, they will have a very hard time doing what they just did to each other. So that to me is an example of. Thank you guys. We got 20 seconds left to wrap it up. Bigger things I've learned from listening to you is sensation of failure. It's always there. You never stop it. The day you stop having that sensation or that feeling something's off. Metrics, finding the viral components of it, figuring out what the customer wants, making sure you're crazy about looking at these things and understanding what the experience is matters more than anything. Talent starts on day one and it never ends. And you have to have a purpose. And when you have a purpose, you get to recruit the best people. And lastly, be humble, always, at all levels. And here's a great example of it. So thank you very much. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, Micky.
Thank you, Micky.